Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. While watching, if you find this story interesting and want to hear more interesting stories, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out. The name Brandon Kessler is mine. I had been the backbone of our family's boutique brand, Skirich Hotels, for 15 years. I wasn't after corner offices or titles at 42. I just ensured that our 8 locations in the Northeast operated efficiently, that our employees felt appreciated, and that our visitors continued to return. Danielle, my sister, was standing across the desk, her arms folded. Since our father took over as chairman, she had been the president of Skirich for precisely 11 days. Apparently, her first executive action was to fire me. As I emptied my desk drawer, she added, "The board agrees we need fresh perspectives. A Marriott consultant has been sent in to take over your duties." I nodded while maintaining a neutral expression. She referred to the board that she had appointed last week, which included our father, herself, and 2 of her business school pals. My sister had always been the company's spokesperson, attracting investors, giving speeches at trade shows, and claiming the credit for our expansion. In the meantime, I coordinated renovations, negotiated with suppliers, and cultivated relationships with employees, the unsung labor that kept us viable. She said, looking at her watch, "You'll get 6 months severance. The documentation is prepared by Human Resources." I was cautious not to break anything when I put my family's pictures in a box. Last in line was the framed photo of our grandfather outside our first Burlington hotel, the one Danielle had never bothered to hang at her workplace. Prodding, she had nothing to say. Not a hair out of place, her flawless jacket matched her flawless manicure. I simply grinned mockingly. "I wish you luck as you renovate Westbrook." A brief panic flashed through her eyes. She would now have to deal with the Westbrook property without my help because it was our largest and its refurbishment was both over budget and behind schedule. "It'll be all right," she said. 2 times that size of property has been restored by my consultant. Without saying another word, I picked up my package, nodded once more, and left. In a 15-minute meeting, 15 years of labor were rejected. 5 years ago, our father pulled me aside and gave me advice that altered everything. Danielle may have forgotten this in her haste for control. He had advised Brandon to never put all of his eggs in one basket. Although we have a long history in the hotel industry, the true value is in the land. I had heeded the instructions, moving stealthily while my sister gathered honors and titles. I was unconcerned as I drove out of our Boston corporate headquarters. When the lease renewals were due in just 3 months, I knew that my patience would be rewarded. As a child, I watched my father transform a small, troubled hotel in Burlington, Vermont, into a reputable regional chain of Skirich hotels. Danielle accompanied him to investor meetings and industry events, but I liked to accompany our maintenance crew around the back halls to see how the buildings worked in real life. By 16, I was able to haggle with linen suppliers and any adult on staff, as well as solve a broken HVAC system. My father would say, not in a mean way, but your sister sees the larger picture. The details that enable it are visible to you. The equilibrium was effective until it wasn't. Danielle's ambition increased as our father grew older. She started hiring consultants who created glossy papers that suggested organizational reorganization. She also discussed lifestyle branding, celebrity relationships, and national expansion. I occasionally questioned whether she truly remembered that our company's mission was to provide people with a comfortable place to sleep. I could see the writing on the wall 5 years ago when our father first talked about taking a step back. Our 3 most lucrative properties, Burlington, Portland, and Westbrook, were all operating on land we leased rather than owned, I discovered during a routine financial review. Decades ago, when we signed 99-year leases, the original owners were elderly, and now their heirs wanted to sell. I informed my father, while we were having lunch at his favorite steakhouse, that it's a vulnerability. We're stuck if someone purchases that land and boosts our prices. Slowly, he nodded. That's something I've been meaning to address. However, since the new property in Providence is consuming all of our funds. Carefully, I answered, I could buy them. For myself. Then, at the same rates, lease back to Skirich. No, my dad looked at me over his glasses. "Brandon, that would take a big personal commitment." I said simply, "I believe in our company, and I've been saving." He put me in touch with our bank the following day. After 3 months, I was the owner of the property beneath our 3 flagship hotels. With a 5-year preferential lease that would eventually need to be renewed, the corporation remained the tenant. Is Danielle aware of this agreement? As we signed the documents, my father had inquired. I answered, it's all in the corporate documents. However, she only reads those when absolutely necessary. He laughed. You see the trees, and your sister sees the forest. She will eventually realize how crucial that is. I pondered whether that day had finally come as I drove home from my final day at Sky Reach. The tiny changes over the past year had not escaped my notice. Danielle reassigns my finest employees, questions my budget demands, and keeps me out of key discussions. Long before today's discussion, the foundation for my dismissal had been established. I woke up at the same time as usual the morning after I was fired. 5:30 a.m. For 15 years, I had begun my day by going over the overnight reports from our properties and taking care of any problems before they got out of hand. My phone was silent today. No crises. No need to extinguish fires. Nothing but quiet. I sat on my back porch with a view of Boston Harbor after making coffee. Constant and purposeful, the cargo ships glided over the water in silence. I had always respected their effectiveness. No motion was wasted. No need to be acknowledged. The simple task of transporting value from one location to another. It buzzed on my phone. Miguel, our property maintenance manager at Westbrook, texted us. Heard the events. Man, their loss. Changes are already being made by the new consultant. Taking shortcuts during the remodeling process. Bad. I simply replied back, thank you, but I didn't have any suggestions. No longer my problem. We received another communication, this time from our dad. Rosie's for breakfast. 8 a.m. Our original business headquarters was 2 streets away from Rosie's, a diner. It had been years since we had eaten there together. He was older than I remembered and was sitting in a corner booth when I got there. I took a seat, and he nodded. He remarked without prelude, and she informed me after the fact. My approach would have been different. But I noticed that you didn't stop it. Not a query. He stirred his coffee and sighed. According to Danielle, Skirich needs to change and become less family-run and more corporate. And you concur? I believe. He hesitated, picking his words wisely. That the board is impressed with your sister's growth vision. Without asking, the waitress brought our regular orders. I had toast and eggs. And he had blueberry pancakes and black coffee. Not everything had changed. When she was gone, he said, the land. The terms of the lease are unclear to Danielle. I carefully chopped my eggs. Everything is explained in the business documents. She doesn't read the fine print, you know. He looked at me sharply. The revival is approaching. 3 months, I said. My lawyer and I had previously discussed terms. My dad put his fork down. Brandon, what are you planning? Between us hung the question. It dawned on me then that I had been anticipating this conversation for years, even getting ready for it. At last, the quiet, trustworthy son has power over the preferred daughter. I had envisioned fulfillment and validation. Rather, I simply felt worn out. At last, I said, market rate leases. No more, no less. Slowly, he nodded. That will have a big effect on our operating expenses. I did look him in the eye. It will. Silently, we completed our breakfast. He put a hand on my shoulder as we went outdoors. He remarked, your sister views business as a game to win. You've always viewed it as a starting point. Remember that distinction. I saw him leave, his shoulders hunched a little from age. For the first time, I could clearly see what had always been in front of me. Danielle underestimating me wasn't the only thing that happened. It concerned our father's facilitation of a division that had been widening for many years. I went back to my house and set up my office. When I bought the land underneath it, the original drawings for our Burlington hotel were framed and put on the wall. Now let's concentrate on the foundations. Danielle finally gave me a call 2 weeks after I was fired. I listened to her well-considered message after letting it go to voicemail. We must talk about the transition, Brandon. There are some missing files. Give me a call back. Don't apologize. The fact that she had dismissed her brother after 15 years of service was not acknowledged. As usual, nothing special. After deleting the message, I met with an old college acquaintance who had turned into a commercial real estate developer for the day. She showed up to my condo the following day. She swept by me into the living room as I opened the door. She said, "You're ignoring me. Your choice to remove me from company business is one that I respect." She sat on my couch without invitation, and I stood. "Which files are you missing?" "Vendor agreements, upkeep plans, and Westbrook's overall renovation blueprints." She scowled. "As well as financial records. Our knowledge about property leases is incomplete." I said, "Everything is in the shared drive. As usual, arranged by department and property. You know, your system isn't very user-friendly." With her fancy heel bouncing with annoyance, she crossed her legs. "Additionally, context is necessary for your replacement." Without offering her a cup of coffee, I poured one for myself. "A hotel expert who has transformed properties twice our size is my replacement. He can probably come up with a filing system." Hearing her own words hurled back at her caused her eyes to tighten. "Brandon, this isn't helpful. The business need." I interrupted, "I no longer work for the company." "Do you recall?" As she stood, Danielle smoothed her skirt. "All right. I will formally request the docs from legal." I walked toward the door and said, "Do what you need to do." We had finished our talk. A week later, Skirich's attorney sent a certified letter asking for any company-related documents. I sent it to my own lawyer, who replied with a thorough inventory of all the information currently on business servers and a kind reminder that my personal notes and documents belonged to me. Employees of Skirich began calling me in the interim. The new consultant was putting efficiency measures into place, reducing worker hours, postponing maintenance, and switching out long-standing suppliers for less expensive ones. The morale was falling. Visitors were taking notice. I had a peculiar emptiness instead of contentment. I had been working with these folks for years. I had personally employed a few. My sister's vision and my absence were threatening their livelihoods. Our property insurance company then sent us an email asking for clarification regarding recent ownership changes that had an impact on 3 important properties. Danielle had apparently tried to update the insurance coverage and run into the reality. The property beneath our most successful hotels was not owned by the firm. "Yes, I did." Without replying, I sent the email to my attorney. The following morning, my dad called. "Were you aware?" He spoke in a strained voice. "That legal documents are not reviewed by Danielle?" "Indeed." A deep sigh. "An emergency board meeting has been called by her. Claims that you have kept important information from the business. There was nothing concealed." I gave a fair response. Every lease has the appropriate paperwork. For the past 5 years, the corporation has been paying my rent. "Giving you money?" He sounded truly perplexed. "Payments to BK Holdings are shown in the accounting." That sounded to her like a property management firm. BK Holdings. Kessler Holdings. Brandon. For years, my sister had been approving payments to her own brother while simultaneously signing off on financial papers. "Tomorrow is the board meeting," my father added. "You ought to be present." I reminded him that I was no longer on the board. "Brandon." His tone grew softer. "Our family still owns this company." I sat at my desk and turned my grandfather's old hotel key between my fingers after we hung up. My father had turned the first property into Skirich using the same key that opened it. "Yes, it is a family company." Families, however, were meant to protect one another. An hour later, my lawyer called. "Information regarding lease renewals is being sought by Skirich's lawyers. What would you like to do next?" I made up my mind. Forward the updated terms to them. Market value. No particular attention is given. On the corner of Ocean Avenue, the 8-story Westbrook Hotel reflected the Casco Bay morning light through its expansive windows. It was a dilapidated motor lodge that I personally oversaw being transformed into one of our most unique residences. I was oblivious to the corporate drama taking place behind the scenes as I sat in my car across the street and watched customers pour through its doors. My lawyer Patricia buzzed my phone with a text. The updated lease terms have been sent to them, and they anticipate hearing back today. I knew they would be shocked by the numbers. Skirich had saved almost $2 million a year on the 3 properties thanks to the below-market rates I had given 5 years prior. That benefit would be completely eliminated under the new rules. A familiar silver Mercedes pulled into the designated parking space next to the door as I watched. Danielle. Portland was not meant to be her destination today. As she walked inside the building with her phone close to her ear and made a forceful gesture, I fell deeper in my seat. My curiosity overcame me. I gave Miguel a call. Without saying hello, he replied, "Your sister is on the warpath. Inspection in an emergency. Also brought along the new consultant. What do they want to find? Blueprints and property records. Mentioned structural assessment in some way." He spoke more softly. "I believe they're attempting to see whether they can refute your ownership claim between us." I thanked him and then took a car to the Public Records Office in Portland. I opened the original lease agreements, property surveys, and deed transfers on my laptop. As anticipated, everything was correctly submitted and entirely lawful. The information I discovered in the nearby county records caught me off guard. A permit application that Danielle submitted under her married name 2 years ago. A large-scale commercial facility on undeveloped coastal land just outside Portland's city boundaries has been granted a development permit. Instead of Skirich, which is a completely different corporation with my sister as the sole proprietor, I looked up Kessler Vision LLC. Subsequent investigation showed that the same LLC had submitted comparable permits in Burlington and close to our Westbrook property. All for rival hotel projects. The insight struck like a blow to the body. Danielle had been preparing to start her own rival chain of hotels while I had been faithfully running our family's establishments. She hadn't let me go because she didn't think I was capable. Because I stood in the way of her actual goals, she had fired me. I gave Patricia a call right away. 2 days later, we received the complete picture. "I need you to investigate a business called Kessler Vision LLC." For almost 3 years, Danielle had been pursuing investors for her own upscale hotel brand. Her business plan, which Patricia had acquired via a connection, specifically called for utilizing the knowledge and clients that Skirich had built up and focusing on the same markets that our most prosperous hotels served. One of Danielle's classmates from business school, Vincent Ross, who served on our board, called me unexpectedly the morning of the emergency board meeting. He stated without preamble, "I've seen the lease renewal terms, and I've heard rumors about Kessler Vision." I said, "Not just rumors." A long silence. "I held your father in high regard. I joined this board for that reason." One more pause. "Danielle reassured us that you wanted to pursue other chances and that you were leaving voluntarily. Did she bring up other opportunities for herself?" A deep sigh. "No, I'm calling for that reason. I heard someone shuffle papers. At 2 o'clock, the board will meet. Danielle is going to suggest that Skirich sell the Westbrook, Burlington, and Portland properties, so I think you should be aware of that. Claims that they are not lucrative due to the lease terms. The last component fit together perfectly. In order for her new business to purchase the hotels at distressed prices, she needed Skirich to sell them. The complex circumstance where her new business will become my tenant was caused by the buildings rather than the land." I said, "Thank you for telling me." Vincent answered, "I didn't tell you anything," and hung up. I sat motionless, allowing icy anger to consume me. This was no longer about business. This was betrayal beyond my wildest expectations. I flew to New York to meet with Commonwealth Hotels CEO Julian Hayes instead of going to the board meeting. Over the years, we had met at professional gatherings, and he had once tried to recruit me. I had turned down at the time because I was devoted to my family's company, but now that allegiance felt out of place. Julian said, "Interesting timing," as we took our seats in his corner office with a view of Central Park. "I've heard that Skirich is thinking about selling off some properties." In the hospitality industry, news spread quickly. I verified that there were 3 properties. "They're the most lucrative ones," he said, leaning forward. "Do you also own the land that lies beneath them?" I nodded, something my sister didn't understand until recently. Julian had a serious smile. "Brandon, what precisely are you suggesting?" "A collaboration. When Skirich sells the buildings, Commonwealth buys them. Although I still own the land, I am giving you better lease terms." A packet was slid across his desk. My proposal, existing operations, and comprehensive financials. I stared at the park while Julian went over the papers. I have never had an office with such a view in my 15 years at Skirich. Danielle had insisted on having her own office and the best venues for client meetings. The company's face at all times. Always in the spotlight. Finally, Julian stated, these properties fit our expansion strategy. However, I'm intrigued. Why don't you just increase the rent and have your sister continue to run them? Your income would increase. I clarified that she was already preparing to create a rival hotel business. One that would go straight after Skirich's clientele. He raised his eyebrows. When Skirich is still operational. It's ambitious. It can be summed up in that word. I spoke in a neutral tone. Her strategy, in my opinion, was to depreciate these properties, have Skirich sell them, then buy them at a discount through her new business. Julian laughed with you as her landlord. Uncomfortable. I would rather pick my business associates more carefully. I looked him in the eye. Commonwealth is known for keeping employees on board when it makes acquisitions. I care about that. Julian looked at me for a while. Finally, he observed, family businesses are complicated. I said, this isn't about family anymore. It's about honoring the folks who constructed these hotels. Commonwealth's legal team started creating acquisition proposals 2 days later. I discreetly informed Miguel and other important employees at the 3 properties about possible changes and reassured them that their jobs would be safe in the interim. The news spread more quickly than anticipated. A blog post speculating on Skirich's financial difficulties and Commonwealth's interest in their prime locations was released by the hospitality industry. Danielle answered right away. A company-wide email restating Skirich's dominant position in the market and rejecting any plans to sell properties. Then, in a tired voice, my father called. Her plan to sell was turned down by the board. Good, I said plainly. She is enraged. Claims that you are harming the business. He hesitated. She learned of the meetings you had with Commonwealth. I said nothing. He sighed. Brandon, what do you hope to achieve here? He was unaware of the weight of the question that hovered between us. What did I hope to achieve? Retaliation, fairness, or something more basic? Another long overdue reckoning? I'm defending what I created, I finally replied. The same manner that you instructed me. Following a quarterly report that revealed falling revenue and rising costs, Skirich's stock fell 12% 3 weeks later. On the same day, I got a formal request for a meeting to discuss strategic choices for challenging assets from the board, without Danielle. Julian's crew and my lawyer worked hard to prepare for the meeting. On that day, I entered the conference room at Skirich for the first time since I was fired. Danielle, whose face was tense with barely contained rage, sat at the head of the table. Looking every bit his 70 years, our father sat to her right. The remaining seats were occupied by board members, who maintained a carefully impartial demeanor. I positioned myself at the other end, unlocked my portfolio, and bided my time till they initiated contact. Danielle said, "Let's be clear about what's happening here," in a hurried voice. "My brother is trying to hostilely take over the business that our father founded." "Wrong," I said coolly. "I'm only using my property ownership rights. Given the new lease terms, Commonwealth Hotels is interested in purchasing buildings that Skirich no longer wants to maintain." Vincent Ross cleared his throat. The sale of the properties was never approved by the board. I argued that the board was given false information, and I gave each member a sliding folder. According to these records, Danielle was creating a rival hotel chain that catered to the same clientele while she was president of Skirich. There was silence in the room. As my father opened his folder, the color faded from his face. Danielle muttered, "This is ridiculous." I produced a business plan for her that clearly stated Kessler Vision's desire to harness the knowledge and clients it has established at Skirich. Kessler Vision is a consulting organization, not a hotel development company, with permission applications in 3 cities where Skirich operates. With a look of betrayal on his face, our father faced her. "Is this accurate?" Her quiet was sufficient response. I went on. "The property's market worth is less than Commonwealth's offer. It includes pledges to uphold existing customer commitments and keep all present employees." I stopped. Something Danielle's business did not intend to do. She said in a trembling voice, "You've been planning this for years. purchasing the land that will be your trap. No, I made the correction. In order to safeguard our family company, I purchased the land. It was you who determined that I was no longer a member of that family. With one exception, our father, who remained still for the whole meeting, the board unanimously decided to accept Commonwealth's offer. Danielle walked away silently as the meeting came to an end. Then Vincent came over to me. "Tomorrow, the board will be asking Danielle to resign," he remarked gently. "While we reorganize, we will require temporary leadership." I gave a headshake. "I won't be like that. I've arranged something else." After a year, I was standing on the rooftop patio of the Westbrook Hotel, which is now Commonwealth's Northeast Collection flagship. Although the property was now called the Harbor View, not much had changed. The majority of the employees had remained, Miguel continued to oversee maintenance, and visitors continued to take in the breathtaking views of the ocean that had made it unique. I was joined by Julian, who gave me a quarterly report. Revenue is up 17% over the previous year. Regarding the possibilities of the local market, you were correct. I mostly worked in the background as the consulting director for Commonwealth's regional properties, negotiating with suppliers, supervising employees, and maintaining quality standards. No board politics, no power suits, no corner office. All I had ever sought was the work itself. "Did you see your dad?" Julian asked thoughtfully. I gave a nod. "Monthly dinners. He's getting used to being retired." He had completely left Skirich after the takeover. 5 properties were still run by the corporation, but none of them were doing as well as the ones Commonwealth had purchased. "What about your sister?" "Last month, Kessler Vision declared bankruptcy. I stated it without regret or delight. It turns out that having a business degree and ambition are not enough to establish a hotel." We watched vessels move along the harbor in pleasant silence. Julian eventually departed for a different meeting, leaving me to think by myself. My father texted me, and my phone chimed. "Tonight's dinner? Bringing the grandchildren along?" I confirmed with a smile. I had ensured that my relationship with my niece and nephew stayed unbroken despite the corporate turbulence, and they were not accountable for their mother's conduct. I gave the property one final glance as the sun started to set. The land beneath it, as well as the building itself. The base upon which everything else was built. Ultimately, Danielle had never grasped that. It wasn't about who had the fancy title or the largest office when it came to success. Making something sturdy enough to withstand any storm was the goal. I walked down the stairs, avoiding the view. It's time to get ready for family dinner. In any case, the part is worth retaining.